Our next guest and keynote speaker is a man I want to talk to on a daily basis. He's a teacher, a mentor, and a lifetime campaigner for small business, who, and I must mention this, appeared in the first two series of The Dragon's Den. He is now the founder of School for Startups, enabling new and inspiring entrepreneurs to turn their big ideas into successful enterprise. I am absolutely delighted to open our retail theatre to Doug Richard, School for Creative Startups.
Hello. Oh my goodness. I feel commanding. Hello. That's great now. Right, so I was going to talk a bit today about two things, broadly speaking. One, a bit about entrepreneurship and retail, because it's changing, and it's changing at a very fast pace. And I'm not just interested in what's happening now, but what happens after what happens next, because it's much more interesting to look beyond the visible horizon. And then I'm going to also talk a bit more about aspiring entrepreneurship and a bit about what we do, in case you're interested. And if you're not, just leave really quietly at that point. And then I will take questions if you're interested. So, the future of retail. If you had to guess 15 years ago that we would be where we are, you'd think that looking forward, you'd think this was the future, that 15 years, the internet had happened, e-commerce had happened, and we are now at a mature stage of the future. When in fact, if we were to go forward 15 years and look back, we'd realize that we are still actually in the infancy of the impact the internet is going to have on our lives. And you need to understand that, because to the degree that you care about making, creating, selling, delivering, shipping, any of the things that involve any of the products in this room or in any of the retail shops around the world, you have to understand that where we're at is not where we're going to be. The change is inexorable and it's getting larger. So I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about that, and I want to start by talking about why today is worse than the past. Today's better than the past in a lot of ways, and people talk about the upside of e-commerce and the internet. I want to talk about the awkwardness if you're young or small. Not as a person, but as a business. Short people are fine too, right? So, young, small businesses. Why is today worse? 20 years ago, if you had a shop, or even 15 years ago, if you have a shop, it's impossible to be invisible. By definition, you walk down the street, people will stumble upon you. Footfall exists. It's impossible not to be noticed to some degree. Whereas on the internet, it is perfectly possible, in fact, it's likely to be completely invisible. Nobody has to stumble upon you. You could remain utterly invisible forever. And that's the wonder and the problem with being a young, small company in the 21st century, is because whatever disadvantage you had before, that disadvantage is now greater. Now, some people would offset that by saying that the cost of starting a new business, especially creative businesses, has never been cheaper, and that's true. It is a fraction of a fraction as hard now to start as it was even 10 years ago. Things that used to cost money simply do not. More people have access to being entrepreneurial. If you're somebody who makes goods, and you have a stand here, and those goods are you as a manufacturer, whether it's artisanal or not, you now can be a retailer as well, by definition. You can now place yourself in the position to have a store without having a store, thus e-commerce. That is a lure. You think to yourself, how wonderful it is. So one of my programs here in London is called the School for Creative Startups. And much as it says on the tin, we take people who are endeavor to start businesses involving some creative product activity, whether that's product or fashion or the arts, and we help them, teach them how to start their business. And all of them say to me when I first ask, what's your business model going to be? They say, well, I'm going to cut out the middleman, go direct to the consumer, and keep all that extra profit for myself. And I think to myself, what a disaster in the making. Because if you are standing, wherever you're standing as a young business, and you are to represent reach of other businesses by their height, then you are a midget and you're standing amongst giants. And the only thing the consumer can see is the heads of the giants. They can't even see you. You're going to get lost in that noise. The only way to prosper in that world is to stand on the shoulders of giants. You have to stand on their shoulders so you are more visible. Amplification and leverage have now become the most important element of starting a new business. Reach has become the thing you need to accomplish. The funny thing about the internet is nothing has changed about human beings. everything conforms ultimately to us, or it amplifies what we're already going to do anyways. Thus, 20 years ago, if somebody said to me, what's the most important type of marketing, I would have said word of mouth. What do I say today? Word of mouth. The only difference is it's become more important because it's more amplified. Because 20 years ago, there's only so many people I could tell something about. Today, one post on my Facebook wall tells 250 or 500 people, depending on your age. I'm an old git, so 50 people. If you're 21, 500 people. And you're amplified. That's word of mouth. It's me telling somebody I know about something, and that act of referencing is the most likely way people buy things in the whole world all the time, every time. That's what marketing is, the act of getting others to act on your or talk on your behalf, right? And therefore, if word of mouth was important 20 years ago, it's become indispensable today because the act of the internet is to amplify what we already do anyways. Therefore, the amplification of the internet as a young, small startup is that you disappear. That's what it amplifies. And therefore, you have to offset it in more gross ways. So I put up here SEO, Google AdWords, and landing page optimization. I'll tell you why. SEO is the act of doing what? SEO is search engine optimization. It's very geeky stuff, but if you understand what it means and you think about it in non-technical terms, it starts to make sense of the world around you. So as we sit here today, the largest profit-making machine in the globe is Google. Google is a company that makes more profit per activity than any company in the history of mankind. And 95% of those profits come from only one of their activities. Everything else they do is in the other 5%. So one could reasonably say Google is an unbelievably lopsided, hugely successful, once-in-a-generation monopoly that does one thing. And what they do has implications for our invisibility. What Google does is what? Well, let's picture, once again, 20 years ago, I want to reach a bunch of people. I could take out an ad in a newspaper. So who am I reaching if I take that ad out in a local newspaper? Let's say the local newspaper has a readership of 200,000 people. There's three types of people. If you're an old salesman, you'll remember the terms suspect, prospect, and customer. A suspect is somebody who could buy your product, who's in your target market, but may or may not be ready to buy it right now. They don't know who you are, but they're the kind of person you're intending to sell to, right? A prospect is somebody who's in your target market, but is actively looking to purchase. Because at any given moment of the million people who might buy your product, there's only X number actively searching to buy. Let's say 10%. Now, if you put an ad in a newspaper, you don't reach just people who are interested in buying your product. You reach the whole of the community that reads that newspaper. Let's say 10% of them are suspects. Let's say 10% of those suspects at any given moment are prospects. That means 1 out of 100 people is somebody who might actually be buying your product right now that you want to reach with a relevant message. That means 99 of 100 people you wasted money on by paying for that ad. Then Google comes along. And Google does just one thing. You and I sit in front of a computer, in front of a Google search engine, we type in something, red telephones, red plastic telephones, right? We have just told Google what we're looking for. We have just made ourselves into a prospect for a specific item. Now, if I'm selling red plastic telephones, placing an ad on Google is worth precisely 100 times the exact same ad in the newspaper. So if Google only charges me 99 times more, it's cheaper. Welcome to the most profitable business in the world. Google puts us in front of the people who are already searching for us, and they don't know who we are. They take us from invisible to visible. It's made them the most profitable business on the globe right now, that one activity, because it changes everything. So we are living right now, some people would call it in the age of Google, some people would call it under the tyranny of Google. I veer to the latter. But at this moment in time, therefore, we understand the world through a lens that Google makes. So what else is important about that? Simple. Something you may or may not know is Google has collected every single search that's ever been done in a database and the results for it since they turned the engine on. It's a huge database, almost unimaginably large. And you and I can access it. We can do search queries. We can interrogate that database. Because after all, you're a young company, you're making throw pillows. How do you know what people search for when they search for you? If they don't know who you are, how do you know? You don't know. You can't know. The only way you can know is to go to somebody who doesn't know you, who's looking for the kind of product you sell, somehow find them and ask them, if you didn't know me and you were sitting in front of Google, what would you type in to find this kind of stuff? And then you just have to repeat that a few thousand times and you'll get a good sample base and you're good to go. Impractical. On the other hand, you could just interrogate the Google database and ask for what are they searching for when they search for this, and it will tell you by day, by time, by place, by history, by everything. Now you know what people search for when they search for you. We have moved to a world of from a world of interrupt marketing to a world of intercept marketing. Interrupt marketing is just that. I take an advertisement, I stuff it in a magazine. You're reading the magazine happily, and boom, you run into my ad. You have to jump over my ad to get back to what you're reading, unless it's Vogue, in which case you're just reading the ads anyways, much more rational relationship. That's interrupt marketing. You're watching ITV, you're watching your show, a commercial comes up, you pick up your fast forward to the end of the commercial because you recorded it earlier, and the only thing you remember now is what? The tentpole ads on either end, right? Because if anyone's ever had that in their hand, what you do is you fast forward until you see the ad that started the ad section to get to the ad that ends the ad section, because that's a signal to slow down again. My son does this really well. I'm hit or miss. But it actually means those tentpole ads are more important than standard ads now, because they're the things we actively are remembering. We're choosing to remember them so we don't have to watch ads. So we remember an ad not to watch ads. Great system. But we're trying to jump over. It's the last gasp of interrupt marketing. So we get back to it. But interrupt marketing is not efficient because you only interrupt broad audiences. Whereas if you intercept, you say, there's somebody wandering their way to a sale, and I want to intercept them on the way to the sale because I'm invisible. Nobody knows I exist. So I'm a terrorist, ultimately. I just want to be visible. And so what I have to do is I have to catch them on the way. There's only two ways to do it on the web. One is through something like an interrupted search, a search engine result, either organically or paid. The other way to do it is to be in the bucket of products they look for when they look for products. And there are some huge buckets out there. The biggest bucket is Amazon. The second biggest bucket is eBay. These are buckets. Not on the high street, bucket of a certain type, right? These are communities with a search. Etsy, communities with a search for products. You go into them, you search, you find stuff. You as a consumer going there, where should I be? I need to be all those places. Those are the new giants on whose shoulders I have to stand to become visible. So when somebody comes to me and says, I want to sell it all myself, I say, you will remain a 100% owner of a pie that has nothing in it. What you need to do is make the pie as large as possible and take your fair share of it. That's standing on the shoulders of giants from an internet point of view, right? What about traditional retail? Does traditional retail stay the same over the next 10 years? No, it doesn't. Because what we think now as the future is not the future. We have a device in our pocket we call a phone that is actually a crippled device. It barely provides us the dead minimum of stuff because the bandwidth is so constricted, we have to squeeze things down in parsimonious amounts to have any interactivity at all. Furthermore, it doesn't sometimes connect, so it doesn't know when we're there, or we don't know when it's there, so we don't rely upon it. Not the way you would if, say, rely your life upon it, right? You wouldn't actually say to a surgeon, I'm going to have you cut me open blindfolded, and you can only read stuff from my mobile phone when it's connected. That would be a great risk, right? It's not that reliable, but it will be. We are within 5 years of having probably somewhere in the order of a gigabyte per second download speeds to every device. And every device doesn't mean phones. It means every device. If you know about the Internet of Things, that's the notion of creating connectivity among inanimate devices on a machine-to-machine basis. What does that mean? It means I'm walking down the street and I get near a store near enough for near-field communications to happen. It's already targeted me. They've bought the equivalent of a Google AdWord, and then it appears on my phone because I've chosen to take offers from those things that I'm near that are relevant to me. Right? Is that the future? No, it's actually Japan last year. A very famous science fiction writer wrote, the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed, right? So that isn't even the near future. That's yesterday in a more advanced place than the UK. The fact of the matter is, everything's about to change in the physical environment. And it will be changing because we're going to be bathed in an ocean of broadband. And that level of broadband changes the things we can do. hardware and software have an awkward relationship. We build hardware, and that creates the platforms on which we imagine new things with software. And then the software uses up the hardware, so we build new hardware and imagine new things. Substitute the word hardware for broadband. The more broadband we have, the more unimagined uses come along. So I can't predict with any accuracy what the unimagined uses are because I haven't imagined them. And the few times I have, I've started a business and made millions. And that has not happened very often. Because I've started lots of businesses and made nothing. So those are the unimagined uses that nobody else ever imagined but me. The fact of the matter is, there's a bunch of this coming, and our relationship to the built environment is going to become enrobed in more information. We are very, very close to that. Now, right now, it is considered quite geeky to wear Google glasses, and with any luck, it will always be geeky to wear Google glasses because they look really dorky. And it says something about you, I think, if you're wandering around with this thing in front of you. But who said it has to be glasses? They've already shown that they can put a microchip with a beam of light and shine it right on the back of your eye so that you actually think you're seeing something 3 feet in front of your eye when it's actually a upside down and backwards projection on the back of your eye. We can fool your eye. It's just the hardware is a bit big now. But what happens to hardware? It gets small. And then what happens? It gets invisible. You're 5 to 10 years away from that. We won't have to wear Google glasses. You'll just have to wear glasses. That changes things again. It means that life becomes one big heads-up display. It means all the data you could ever imagine is around you. Think how peculiar it already is, and I'll tell you how peculiar it'll become. 10 years ago, if you couldn't find something on the web, you said, oh, I can't find it on the web. But what happens, say, think about your own behavior. Somebody says, I found these really cool new fill-in-the-blanks, and here's the company. And you go searching for the company on the web, on Google, and you don't find it. The natural assumption now is that the company isn't there, not that you can't find it. Our perception has flipped. Therefore, we don't trust what we can't find on the web, which means if you're not on the web, you don't even exist, much less being invisible. And British audiences are particularly lazy. Sorry, but I've got some facts behind me on this one. So, for example, Google is the majority player in every nation in the world except China in terms of search. And in China, they've gone their own direction for lots of reasons. Everywhere else, it's Google. But in other countries, not this country, in other countries, there are still competitors. But the British have we've completely succumbed to the lure of Google. How do I know? Because we have the highest percentage of Google users. We even use Google in ways others don't use it. This is how lazy we are. We actually, even when we know the web address, will type the name into Google to have it take us there because we're too lazy to type it into the bar ourselves. And don't tell me you don't do it. I can see it. You're all smiling going, uh-huh. That's how lazy we are. You know how else we're lazy? There's a thing called the fold, right? So above the fold in an old newspaper, broadsheet newspaper is a newspaper, you fold it. All this stuff that was above the fold was what you first saw. That has metaphorically transferred to the web, and so when people talk about above the fold on the web, they're talking about everything you can see without scrolling, and that's known as above the fold. In Britain, we don't scroll. Apparently, our hands are so heavy that we cannot move them to a mouse to scroll down, and the greatest number of bounce backs in Britain come above the fold. So if you're going to make an impression on somebody with a British audience, you need to get it all in above the fold, and you need to get them to the site in the first instance. This is how lazy we are and how big an influence Google's had on us. Picture a world where in the next 5 years, everything that you can possibly tag with data is tagged. Everything. So what do I mean by data? Well, let's see. I happen to like tailored men's custom suits. If I walk down a street 10 years from now, I'd say the odds are very high that somehow, whether it's a device in my pocket, which will feel a little antiquated, or some other mechanism, my watch will alert me that there is a bespoke tailor on the corner who's very interested in doing a suit for me. Not for someone, but for me. He already knows who I am, and he's interested. And if I'll just stop in for a moment. Do you have any idea how many things don't happen to you now that could happen? We think ships pass in the night, and they do. They won't. Furthermore, if we don't trust invisibility today, what does it mean when something's data dead tomorrow? If you're walking in a world where everything has something attached to it, you have a heads-up display, you can see things, you're getting information constantly, silence will be suspicion. If we don't amplify ourselves, if you don't have anything around you, you'll look like a dark spot in the world, and we will be suspect of you. The problem is that means privacy is in opposition to credibility. Now, this may seem quite obscure or abstruse, but it's actually just what comes next after what comes next. It's not that far out. As human beings, we adopt the past unbelievably quickly. And we don't foreshadow the future well at all. So wherever we are at any given moment, we look back and say it's obvious, and we look forward and say it'll never happen. And then what never happens, we say it's obvious, and the next thing will never happen. So the future is always in the distance, the past is right behind us. There is no present, right? It already just happened. And so when I talk about this, it sounds, well, that could happen, that's kind of kooky, it's kind of extreme. No, it isn't. It's just tomorrow's normal. You just have to catch up a bit. Because it's important, if you're going to do something in the modern world, to do just a little bit ahead of what's happening now, to have a sense of what's already happening. You don't have to be very far ahead, because most people are very far behind. So it's no big deal. You want to be a futurist, predict the present, because everyone else is living in the past. So how do you move your business forward if e-tail isn't the answer? Well, it is the answer. I mean, it's a rhetorical comment. But the real question is, if you're starting a business, if you're a young manufacturer, if you've got products, you have to ask yourself, how do I navigate a landscape where I am infinitely small and completely invisible in a world where the big are getting bigger? The inequalities of the net are growing, not removing. So if you track net usage by site and you do a density map of who goes where, more people go to less sites now than they did 10 years ago. Does that make sense? It means the big sites are getting bigger and the invisible ones are remaining invisible, and then you have these breakouts. And we have breakouts every year, right? A breakout is Twitter by definition. An unsustainable business that has no idea how to make money, that's growing fabulously well, that's gone public on a promise of impossible profits. That's a good business. I love Twitter. I use Twitter. God only knows how they're ever going to make a dime. I presume at some point they'll make a dime the way every startup does these days, by selling themselves to a bigger company that's making monopoly profits, and then they don't have to make a profit. Thank God for big companies. But those companies, the Twitters, they break out. They become part of a very small universe of very big players. And you're a very small player in a big world, so you have to be very adroit. So you can't accept the notion, for example, of being in one place. If you're going to have an e-tail store, you need to simultaneously have an e-tail store in multiple places. You need to have a store in the Amazon ecosystem. Well, what does that mean? Well, there's tricks to Amazon. Amazon is a ferociously successful company because of an obsessive focus on the customer, to the benefit of the customer and to the neglect of everything and everyone on the planet otherwise. So what do I mean by that? Well, the secret of success in Amazon are two words: marketplace and fulfillment. Amazon Marketplace is an idea that Bezos had many years ago, that he wanted everyone to come to Amazon to type into their search bar. So he lets competitors sell directly competing products through Amazon. So you type in Amazon, you don't just get the Amazon products, you get stuff from the Amazon Marketplace. And if you're on the Amazon Marketplace, you pay a quite small fee relative to normal distribution channels to sell through the marketplace. But of course, you fall behind the Amazon products, right? Wrong. You fall behind the Prime products. Amazon has a product called Amazon Prime. It used to be just free shipping for a year. Well, how can they offer free shipping and guarantee you a date of delivery? By keeping it in their warehouse. Prime is not an offer. Prime is a capacity. Prime is something is sitting in an Amazon warehouse, and therefore they know what it is, they know where it is, they know when they can ship, and they should know how much it costs. Thus, they can offer it for free. So what does that mean to you? It means their search is not based on their products versus yours. It's based on what's in Prime and what's not. What's in the warehouse and what's not. So the easiest way to make pots of money on Amazon is to keep your goods in their warehouse. That's called Amazon fulfillment. They ship it for you. Then you say, oh, but I don't want my products in Amazon's warehouse and in my warehouse. Well, then give up your fucking warehouse. Make them your warehouse. Excuse my language. I didn't say that. I always don't swear. I always try not to swear, and then shit happens. Make them your warehouse so that all your goods are there. Why do you care? You don't want them in your back room. They don't do anything for you in your own warehouse. They're dead goods. Goods are only alive when they're somewhere else. So if they're sitting there and you say, well, I need to ship it to a customer, well, then just make them your warehouse. Change the way you think about business. Because now you're advantaged in Amazon, and you can ship from Amazon's warehouse to your eBay customer, or Amazon's warehouse to your ASOS customer, Amazon's warehouse to your not in the high street customer. Not ASOS, sorry. But you could ship to anywhere, so long as you're the person who owns the goods. So whether that's, you could ship them to a small retailer that's doing physical delivery. You have to have a warehouse, you have to have shipping. But now you have an advantage. You don't just have a one country advantage, you have a 25 country advantage. Because Amazon is the only thing right now, so far as I can tell, that makes the EU a single market. If you've ever actually tried to ship goods to any other country in the EU, it's a hassle. It's not a single market. But if you put your products in an Amazon warehouse, they will ship it to any other part of the EU and take care of all the effort. It's invisible. You now have products available across the EU. Interesting, isn't it? All of a sudden, you're a 25-country shipper, and what did you do? You stuck them in one box rather than another. And to be honest, that box is probably better than yours because you don't ship as well as Amazon does. Do I love Amazon? No. Do I love Google? No. But I know that I'm dancing around the edges of giants, and therefore they have to work for my benefit as well, right? This is what I mean about how you're going to have a store there as well as a store here. You can sell direct, have your own website, enjoy it. It'll be a hobby. But if you're actually the person who makes the goods, your website isn't a business. Your business is the goods. Your locus, your focus, your center is as the manufacturer, not as the retailer. If you want to be a retailer, then you're supposed to be a convening moment for other goods. You're supposed to be a place where people come because you're curating or editing on behalf of an audience and saying this is a selection of things that others don't offer. And if you offer what others offer and offer no other advantage, you're not a retailer, you're a bad business, right? So an e-tail business that comes to me and says, I'm going to be a retailer on the web for this kind of goods, and people are going to come to me because I have this wonderful selection, what you're really saying is I'm going to be a boutique, just the way a boutique is in the real world, and I walk into that boutique, or my wife walks into the boutique and says, oh, I know them, I trust them, it's my kind of taste. But that's hard graft, because the problem is on the web, we're one click away from not being curated. So I can find the goods on the boutique website and then go find somewhere else to buy them cheaper. There's no loyalty amongst purchasers. You're the purchasers. So yes, you're the manufacturers, but this is how you behave when you take one hat off and put the other hat on. When you put that other hat on, you people are scandalously cruel. You are heartless. You click until you find the thing you want, and what you want is availability and price in that order. Because if it's unavailable, you're not usually willing to wait. And if it is available, you then want the lowest price. Right? So when people say, I want the cheapest price, they don't mean that. They want the cheapest price amongst the products they can get yesterday. So that's why Amazon's not the cheapest. Amazon's the cheapest at the available price. And when they monitor, they don't monitor other people's price, they monitor other people's availability. Because they don't have to compete with the unavailable. Make sense? It's actually really simple. The whole world is simple. You just have to kind of look at it through a lens of the future, and it starts to make sense. Looking for inspiration. I'm going to breathe now. What's that? Okay. So I'm going to touch on a few of the things that School for Startups does, in case you're interested in the kinds of things we teach, which is the kinds of stuff I was talking about, but in a less hectic fashion. There's three things I'll touch on. The first is we have a program in London and in Kent called the School for Creative Startups. We help people who have creative businesses get their business started. It's a year-long program. Last year we launched 160 companies. This year we're launching 200 companies. And all of them are going to be celebrating that. And we have speakers and talks and music and festival all at the old Selfridges Hotel at the end of May. And it's the coming out party for 200 new creative companies. It's very interesting. I welcome you to come. If you're interested in the School for Creative Startups generally, possibly as somebody who participates, that's a good place to get introduced to our community. School for Creative Startups is essentially a part-time program that lasts over a year. We teach, we support, we help get access to finance. School for Startups is the largest social lender in the country, so we lend small amounts of money at discounted prices to people so they can get their businesses started, called social lending. We lent about 11 million pounds last year to about 1,400 startups around England. And we're very interested in helping others. We're a social enterprise. Love to see you successful. The only thing we ever ask for in return is your undying love, and you have to talk about us forever. Aside from that, it's free. We teach a lot on the program. There's multi-day boot camps, there's 120 hours of live teaching, there's videos, there's small group crits, there's personalized support, there's an online community, there's the big party at the Make Good Festival. We have access to angel networks, large amounts of capital, small amounts of capital, borrowed capital, crowdfunding, you name it. And then the last thing is our social lending program. If you're starting a business and you want some financial help, just come to Launcher and we'll probably find a way to get you off the ground. So that was my sort of pitch, such as it was, for our programs. If you're interested in those, schoolforstartups.net, it's all there somewhere.